Hello all, welcome to a real life history video with me, the real life historian. Today we're going to be solving a little mystery that you may have pondered on in your life, because these type of structures appear in many villages and towns across the United Kingdom. You may have walked past it and probably thought to yourself, what is it? You may actually live on a street that shares the name of what this structure is. Well, I can give you the boring answer now, and then I'll go into a bit more detail when you grab yourself a cup of tea and sit down and get warm. So, the boring answer. This is an animal pound. They were common all across the United Kingdom in the medieval and early modern periods, but their origins can be traced further back, which is where we're going to go into now. So there's your boring answer. I hope you've got that cup of tea, and I hope you're sitting comfortably. So let's go explore a little bit more of history. Pound, so important. Let's first understand the word pound itself. Pound comes from the Old English word pund, which meant pen or enclosure. Pinfold is also used in parts of the UK, which means very similar sort of thing, and it also gives us another word, pinder, which means to pen up or enclose. Now, why were these pounds so important? Well, these pounds were important because farming was so different back then. Now farms are sealed off, walled off, fenced off, and hedged off. But back then, farms stretched for as far as the eye could see, and fields touched each other. There was no fences, they were too expensive. There was no hedges, also too expensive. So farming relied on being kind to your neighbour. Now, this did have the tendency of meaning livestock was to stray into your neighbour's field, which is why these pounds were used. They were used to keep livestock that had gone astray in the pound, so the owner could come and collect it. We'll get on to why this is more important soon, but let's first explore some of the origins of these pounds. Okay, as I said, the origins of these can be traced back even further. Well, how far back? To the Anglo-Saxon times. Back then, they were communal areas of your village or town. They were made of simple wood, and they would be, as I said, communal. So the town would chip in for it because livestock was important and expensive. If you lost your cow, you needed to find your cow as quickly as possible. So this is where you would go find it. It wouldn't be until the medieval times that these pounds really did blow up in popularity. Every town and every village would have one. They probably still do, but they're probably in ruins now. They would be sourced from local material that was, well, could be found from the area, just like castles were in the early time, sort of castles. So some could be made of flint, some could just be made of simple rubble. It was whatever could be sourced locally. But, as I said, every town, every village would have a communal pound. So, I know the question you probably have now is, why is this important? It's an animal pound, how boring. Well, it's not. This here was the law. Yes, it was the law. Medieval law, agricultural law, village law. Many medieval laws had rules and guidance set out on animal pounds, which is fascinating, I think. Something so simple, but yet was so fundamentally important to law and order. As I said, fields were wide open, so if your animal had strayed across your neighbour's land, well, the animal would be brought here, and you would get it from here to save disputes and arguments between landowners. But these pounds were manned, well, they were owned by the lord of the manor, who would appoint someone in charge. Or the village would also appoint someone in charge, and they would be known as pound keeper, also a pinder, as we've just learned the word pinder comes from. Now, so, it's the law, but is it really the law? Yes. Simply put, it is the law. So, your animal has unfortunately strolled across someone else's field. Instead of them running up to you and screaming at you, shouting, "Your cow is across my field," they would go fetch the pound keeper. The pound keeper would then come along, fetch the cow, and bring it here to the pound. Your cow is now impounded. It is now the property of the pound keeper. To get your cow back, you must now pay a fine or a levy. These fines or levies could be anything, to be honest. It's so hard to track down exactly how much these fines were, because it would depend on multiple different things. One, the type of animal. Two, well, the amount of animals. Three, how long it stays in here for. If it stays in there for a very long time, you're going to get a larger fine. However, a bigger thing, of the damages your animal has caused, yes, you would be paying for the damages that your animal has caused across the other landowner's land. Now, what if you couldn't pay your fine? What if the fine was too expensive? Well, your little cow Betsy would be taken to market within 3 weeks and sold. The revenue made at market would then be used to pay the fine and pay for the damages caused. The pound keeper wouldn't keep your animal in horrible condition. We must remember livestock was incredibly important for people. So the pound keeper would have to be fairly nice towards the animals, feed them, water them, and care for them. But it was simple medieval law. The pound keeper was almost like your rural Bobby, your rural police officer of today. They dealt with disputes, they dealt with arguments in a peaceful manner by just simply locking the cow away. How cool. Then there's another way to deal with your fine and payment. In a world where the literacy rates are very, very low, most people don't know how to read and write, a tally stick would be used to keep the score of how many animals you owned and how much you actually owe towards the landowner. Tally sticks have been part of history for, well, since the dawn of time, really. Pliny the Elder even mentions tally sticks, and so does Marco Polo mentions tally sticks being used in China. So, what is a tally stick? Well, a tally stick can either be made from wood or bone. Notches would be made in the stick. For this case, it would be the amount of animals that had walked across the land. And then the tally stick would then be split in half. The landowner would get one half. The pound keeper would get the other half. You, as the animal owner, must now find the funds to pay the landowner directly. If you didn't, well, Betsy's off the market. But if you did pay the landowner, you would then walk over here with your other half of the tally stick, which the landowner would give you. You would then give it to the pound keeper, he would then match the stick together. And well, if it matched, you were given your cow back. If it didn't, your cow sold at market. That is the greatest penalty of this. Got to remember how important livestock is for people. Something else that is quite interesting about these fines is that the leftover money after the upkeep of this has been paid, the fine towards the landowner has been paid, the leftover money would actually go back into the village itself, which made it a great source of revenue for the village. Which I find quite interesting, that something like this was so communal and so important to agricultural living in the United Kingdom. The decline of these pounds wasn't quick. It actually took a few centuries for them to turn to what they are now, ruins. It all started the start of the early modern period. Farming techniques and livestock techniques were changing throughout Europe. There was less need for these pounds now, less need for the pound keeper. But the real nail in the coffin for these pounds were certain acts that were implemented by Parliament. In 1604, one of the first Enclosure of Lands Acts came across. Land was no longer communal. You could no longer sort it out between your neighbour and yourself. It was now Parliament that would sort land out.
You couldn't walk up to your neighbour and decide where your land was. No. Parliament decided now, and land was to be enclosed and fenced and hedged. From 1604 till 1914, 5,200 enclosure bills went through Parliament. This sealed off large portions of land throughout the United Kingdom. Well, what does this mean? Well, it means there's less livestock walking around, and there's less strays. There's no need for the pound anymore. Your cow isn't going to go missing. So, the decline was coming. By the 18th century, most of these were ruined. By the 1900s, their job was pointless. Some survived in towns to catch runaway horses from carriages, but many declined to what they are now, rubble. What is the legacy of these animal pounds? Well, they live on in street names and lane names. The lane that I'm standing on right now is simply called Pound Lane. So have been restored, and this one here in Blundeston was not too long ago restored. Unfortunately, it has been forgotten again, but many have been restored back to what they were. In Gloucestershire last year, a team of 80 people finished off a project that had been started the year before from a grant of £23,000, and they restored the pound back to its former glory. But yet, the history of these important parts of agricultural law and order have been completely forgotten at the time. This plaque here, you can't even read it, you can barely even read it now. And most plaques don't actually explain how important it was for agricultural law and why it was like it.
And there we go. There is your little lesson of today over. Now you know what one of these pounds is. So next time you walk past one, you'll understand how important it was for the medieval people that were alive at the time these were in use. And you also now know a little bit about the language as well. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a little like. If you've got any feedback for me, as this is my first ever video on YouTube, please let me know in the comment section. I'm sorry if the audio quality is a bit rubbish throughout this video. I'm not too sure what happened. I've tried to lower it and I've tried to balance it throughout. If you've got anything that you really want to say in the comments, if I've got anything wrong, please let me know. I am a history student, so I probably will get a few things wrong. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. And then until next time, this has been Real Life History with the Real Life Historian.